We're talking mass market paperbacks here, guys. Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. Today we are talking about the pros and cons of mass market paperbacks. Before we get started, please make sure if you get value out of this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe as well so that you don't miss out on my future content. Join the Discord. Links are in the description below for that and every other way that you can find me on the internets. Now that that's said, let's get right to the topic for today. You know that I am a huge proponent of ebooks. I do own physical books as well, and several of those are mass market paperback. So I thought it might be interesting to do a pros and cons video for mass market paperbacks. I did do a video a while back on the pros and cons of Amazon Kindle. So if you want to check out that video, feel free. I will leave a card for it at the end of this video so that you can go check that out. But today we're talking about mass market paperbacks. And I'm going to break this up into two sections. We're going to start with the pros first, and then we'll move to the cons. And then I'll talk about some final thoughts. All right? So I've got my trusty eyes here, as always. Ooh, they need to be cleaned a little. I should probably clean my glasses. Chaz, clean your glasses more often. As I talk to myself in the third person. Anyway, here we go. So starting with the pros, I would say that right off the bat, the biggest pro about mass market paperbacks is that they are easily portable. This is a copy of Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is my original mass market paperback, and it's super easy if I wanted to stick it in a bag to travel with me. I could easily stick it in my pocket, easily, not necessarily comfortably, but it would fit in my pocket. You know, if I just was out and about and I had no other place to put it, I could, stick it in my hat, and it's, okay, maybe that didn't work. But you get the point. It's easily portable. And I love that about mass market paperbacks in terms of reading a book on the go. If I don't want to take my Kindle with me, but I want to bring something to read, I can easily bring a mass market paperback with me. So really easy to do. The next one I thought of is that it takes up little bookshelf space. And I mean, it really does. I can easily stack several of these on top of each other. And in fact, I've done that on my bookshelf. If you can see back here, I've got stacks of mass market paperbacks on top of each other, and so it's really easy to find shelf real estate for mass market paperbacks because they're so versatile in terms of how you organize them on a shelf. And I contribute that to the small form factor. It makes it really easy to figure out where to put it. Stack a bunch of them together, and they take up about as much as two hardback books next to each other. So it's great. Another one I thought of is that they are easy to hold, especially in bed. So if I'm reading in bed, which is pretty rare for me, I'm usually reading my Kindle. But if I really want to read a physical book in bed, it's really easy to just kick back. I'm kicking back in bed. I'm reading my physical book here. I can easily hold it with one hand. Brace between my two fingers as I turn the pages. So it's really easy to do in most cases. Some mass market paperback books are chunkier than others, so that doesn't really always work. But for a book like Neverwhere, it's not too long and not chunky at all. So yeah, that makes it easy to read in bed. The next one is broken spines hold up better than they do on hardbacks. If I've got this open, over time, the spine is going to break. It's going to get a little bit of that wear and tear on it, but it still holds up pretty well. I've had this book for years, read it a couple of times, and it's starting to show creases on the spine, but I've had hardback books that over time, the spine just kind of breaks apart. And so mass market paperbacks in general seem to hold up better. So, yeah, that's another good pro. And it holds up better if you throw it across the room. So you got to this great part in the middle of the book. All of a sudden, something happens that just really makes you angry, and you're like, ah! Well, I don't do that, but I can imagine some people would do that, And so, if you throw the book across the room, it lands against a wall or something, chances are it's probably going to come out fine if it's a mass market paperback, whereas a trade paperback or a hardback might sustain more damage. So that I see as a pro. Also, another pro is if somebody is angry at you and they throw a book at you. If it's a mass market paperback, it's not going to hurt as much. It will still hurt, but it won't hurt as much. And no, I don't advocate throwing books at people. Or if you do throw books at people, at least make it a book you don't like. Yeah, so, yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll move on from there. How about? So that takes care of the pros. Let's talk about some cons, okay? One thing I have found with most mass market paperbacks is the font is so damn small. In most cases, like especially with bigger, chunkier books, like I've had mass market paperback copies of the Stormlight books at one point by Brandon Sanderson, and the font is so small on those because they have to be able to squeeze 1,200 pages into a reasonably sized mass market paperback, and so you're sacrificing a lot with the font size. I get why they do it, but it's like, just don't make it in mass market paperback, because people like Chaz, who they don't care about, but people like me have a hard time reading that really small font. Even with glasses on, I can do it with glasses on, but really wears on the eyes still. So I would say that that's a huge con for me. Another one is there's little to no flop factor, right? So you've got your mass market paperback. It has a little bit of flop, but it doesn't have the flop that trade paperbacks do, and it doesn't really flop open like trade paperbacks do or that hardbacks do. So you still kind of have to hold it open, like with your fingers. It's not that flexible where it just flops open and you don't have to hold it open. So that's one thing that is kind of bothersome for me, but it is what it is. You sacrifice one thing for the portability and things like that. So it's okay. And along with that, because there's no flop factor, if you want to make it so that it has more flop factor, it's going to be a lot easier to break that spine. So that's one thing you'll sacrifice if you're wanting to make it more floppier. So I've seen people do this with books. I don't advocate this, guys. I have another copy of Neverwhere, so I'm not necessarily upset if something happens to this book, but I try to keep my books in good condition. But if you're holding a book open like this, to try and make it floppier, it's going to break down that spine a lot quicker and cause more damage and wear and tear over time. Longer books end up being thicker and heavier. We kind of talked about longer books, but we talked about it with font size. It also applies with the portability factor, because if they try to fit so many pages into this small little form factor, it's going to end up being really large. It's going to end up being at least twice the thickness of this, and I've got books like that. I would pull one out to show you, but the point is, it becomes heavier at that point, harder to hold. You're not going to be able to hold it open with one hand, maybe like I can with this one. So, yeah, as books get longer, it's just less and less appealing to have it as a mass market paperback. At that point, you probably want to buy the trade paperback or just buy it on Kindle. I mean, I like that option. Another one is it won't survive water damage too well. Most mass market paperbacks are made with just cheap paper, not very thick paper, and if they get exposed to water for any amount of time, they're gonna be goners. Whereas with a trade paperback, you're still gonna get a little bit of that, but you might be able to salvage it better than a mass market. And with hardbacks, the hardback is so thick that there's a good chance you might be able to salvage the contents of the book entirely, because the hardback portion of it has soaked up the majority of that water. So yeah, mass market paperbacks don't hold up well to water very often, if at all. It's one of those things. You have to be more careful with it as a result if you don't want it to get easily damaged. And they are harder to find matching sizes, especially if you are a series collector. There are various different versions out there of the Dresden Files, for instance. And there are various different sizes because they've started releasing books in this new, weird, taller, slimmer version of mass market paperback. So I'll give you an example. I don't have any of the Dresden books in physical form. I buy those all on digital because Jim Butcher just writes so many damn books. I figure he would take up too much room on my shelf. But I do have an example with Neil Gaiman. So I've showed you Neverwhere. I also have Stardust. Now, as you can see, Stardust is taller. It might be thicker. It might be about as thick as Neverwhere if it wasn't for the height of the book. So it's taller and it's also skinnier, which is it's fine. I like skinnier. It's still fairly easy to hold, but it just looks weird. I don't know. Why are they moving from this to this? And in some cases, they're just doing both, depending on the author and the series. So if you want to have uniformity on your bookshelf, which is nice, it's not like extremely important to me, but it is nice. If you want to have uniformity in size, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to have that. So I don't know why they started doing that. It's fine. It doesn't bug me as much as it does some people. Like some people hate this form factor. I don't hate it. I just wish they'd make up their mind, one or the other. Don't do both, because it just creates chaos on the shelf, So those are the things that I thought of in terms of the pros and cons of mass market paperbacks. What do you think? Are there any that I did not mention that you think should have gotten mentioned? Leave those below in the comments. I'd love to talk about it with you. And until next time, guys, I hope you read more books, whether it's Kindle or mass market paperback, hardback, or trade. You pick. Doesn't matter to me, but as long as you're reading, I'm a happy camper. Till next time. Bye.